Print. Hey everyone, welcome to Fine Print, hosted by yours truly, Tiffanie Fine, where survival becomes strategy, the real stories behind leadership, resilience, and results. So I have a lot of different training that I've done recently and some things that had come up that I want to share with you. But there's something that I've been going back and forth about addressing, and I've made the decision that I'm not going to look at the comments anymore. But because I want to make sure that everyone gets a little bit of clarity on some of the stories that I'm telling. These are my stories. They are, and I'm going to reference the motorcycle story specifically. It is my experience. It is my story. Whether you believe me or not is completely irrelevant to me. What it does, and the whole point of it, is to help you understand that those circumstances helped transition and give me skills that have transitioned my life in a business world. So I've been able to utilize a lot of the skills that I learned and the trials and errors that I made back then and apply them in a corporate world. And that's the entire point of the stories. Now, a little bit of clarity so that all the comments can stop, or you can keep making them. Doesn't really matter to me. He was sergeant of arms, and then the president died, and then he became the president. So all of that nonsense is enough. I'm not giving away any club secrets. You don't even know where I lived or where the club was. So I'm not giving any names. I'm not putting anyone in harm's way. And if you have a problem with my experience of it as a young woman, very, very young woman, and how I was treated by them, do what you want with it. I don't particularly care. I'm not going to stop sharing my stories and my experience because it's made me who I am. Again, whether you believe me or not, I don't really care about that at all. But I want to make sure that everyone knows that those stories aren't designed for, me boasting about myself. They're designed to help you understand that they do transition into a professional life that has given me a beautiful experience. And I don't regret any of it, not even a little bit. The things that were learned during that time period have given me more skills than I could ever have asked for. So that's my little rant on that. Moving forward, I'm not reading the comments anymore because it's actually a little bit wild to me that I have 1%ers that are even trolling on Instagram, but that's neither here nor there. So the training techniques that have actually come into play, and a lot of it comes into reading a room. And I came into this just recently. I went to go train with a finance manager, and I had an entire agenda like I usually do of what our target areas are. And I walk into this dealership, and this girl is unraveled. She has been there by herself for 3 weeks because one of her counterpart that also does the job, it has been out because her husband is sick. So she's been picking up all the slack. She hasn't taken any days off. She's got piles of paperwork sitting on her desk. And then I show up with her all frantic, and she had just gotten chewed out by her boss that she's not performing up to standard. By the way, she's not even that far off. And I was like, okay, let's read the room here. How much information is she going to digest if I start training her right now? She's got stacks of paperwork she's already behind on. So instead, I offer my assistance. I'm like, okay, well, what can I do to help? I'm not even going to get in your way. I have no interest in beginning training you and going over, maybe where your performance could increase and start focusing on that and doing a little bit more of back to basic training when she's clearly not even in a headspace to digest it. So, I reframed my entire day. I had plenty of other things that I had to do. So I gave her some space. And what I found really interesting is as soon as I told her, I said, you know what, you do what you got to do. I'm going to give you some space. She went in her office and turned on punk rock emo music, blasting it. And I could hear her kind of singing to it. And she's doing her paperwork and she's in her zone. But it reminded me of a teenager. I've gone through that with teenagers when I've taken in strays and even my son, blasting music or ignoring everything from the outside world. And I was like, if that's what she needs right now, that's what she needs. I'm no one to say what someone needs in those moments. So I gave her the space, and then, I went on, they had some deals working on the floor, and I inserted myself because I could hear the salesman speaking out on the floor. So I wanted to get a little bit more involved. I had some corrections, and oftentimes, you don't want to step on the sales manager's toes. You don't want to, you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way where, again, reading the room and understanding the different personality types so that you're not coming off as like some asshole that's just in there to tell them how to do their jobs. And I walked straight up to the desk when the salesperson went over there to tell him what the customer had said. And I was like, look, check it out. I'm going to give you some information. I just like heard the entire conversation. Here's what I would do. I'll give you guys the details on it another time. But it was wild. This kid is new on the sales floor, and he had given the customer every objection when the customer didn't even have any objections. He just like handed them to him instead of just following a process. So I asked the sales manager, I said, is it okay if I just go out and talk to the customer? I can get what we need to get done way faster. If you guys do it this way, you're going to be at this for hours going back and forth. So I went out there, talked to the customer, got the credit application, they finalized it. It all went through. Everyone was happy, peachy keen. But that only happens and it only works that way when I can do that if I'm invited in. And that means that I have to know the personalities that I'm dealing with. So when I was doing that, the girl that I was training, she was still doing her paperwork, and I walked into her office, and it was very strange. She just had like tears ready to just come out of her eyeballs. And I was like, what is going on? So I closed the door and I was like, dude, what's up? And she's hysterical. She got a phone call from the school that her 6-year-old son is going through some trouble at school. And on top of everything else, on top of work, on top of, being behind on paperwork, on top of like covering for the other girl because she's out, like she's got problems at home. And it just reminds me of like, we tend to forget in management, and this is a management issue. Like by far the biggest management issue that I see around is that we forget that these are human beings. It doesn't mean that we give them a pass and we let them be lazy. It just means that we give them the space to tell us what's going on, understand, and then pick up where we can to help them perform the best, right? And that's what a leader is. That's not, you can be a manager and you can be a boss all day long, but if you're not leading and you're not helping understand where these people are at and meeting them where they are, we're missing the boat entirely. So, when I was looking at this and I'm sitting there and I'm just like, what do you need? Like, what can I do? And she was like, this, and this. And, it was like paperwork stuff. And then, also, can you get my boss off my ass and so on and so forth. And I was like, look, let's at least address like one of the issues that is a concern for everyone. And this is where like performance wise you want to be. And I'm like, if we can at least address one thing while I'm here, then we can feel like we accomplished something other than just paperwork. And by the time that I was done listening to her and understanding what she was going through, I was then able to like get her to respond and get her to be open to understanding like what is being asked of her in a polite manner as she's a human being. She's an adult human being. This isn't a child. This isn't, even though the music in her office felt very adolescent. But this is an adult that we're talking about. She has real life problems that no one else is paying attention to. And as a leader and someone that has, I've managed many people throughout my life, and I didn't learn this overnight. I've made lots of mistakes, and it's come from understanding that in order to get the best production out of someone, you have to understand who they are as a human being and what their trigger points are, like what's important to them. And to her in that moment, her son was the most important thing in the room. Before it was the paperwork, and then it shifted. That's a human being for you. So when we get into that, that's a little bit, how my day turned out. And it wasn't at all what I was expecting. I had an agenda, I had training material, I had everything else. And then you readjust and you reassess depending on the person. And if there's any people in leadership that are out there listening to this, I beg you to know your people, like know them to their core. Your people are your biggest asset. And these are humans that we're talking about. They're not machines. We can't just tell them to produce a number and expect them to just like magically produce that number. We have to understand what their pressure points are. And that's a lot of what my job is. And again, those stories that I'm sharing with you are what made me this successful in what I do, and understanding people to that level is because I've done the work to get through a lot of that BS that I went through, but also the stuff that I went through taught me how to survive, how to read a room, which I use every single day in my profession. So that's all that I have when it comes to the training material that we have recently. I'm going to go into a little bit more of some stories that you may or may not like, and we're going to have some fun with it because some of them are super crazy, and I'm happy to share them because it made me who I am. So stay tuned, you guys. This is the fine print. And just remember, read the room, lead the room, and never ignore the fine print.